England end the All Blacks' dream of a Grand Slam tour at Twickenham. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. England started this game pretty well. They're actually, plenty of front football. And we have Stewart doing pretty well in the air. Brilliant take from him. England spread it on the back of that. They work it into 22. Ford, though, gets his angles completely wrong with a cross kick, and the All Blacks are able to clear. But you've seen some threat from England just in their shape and the way they're able to, create that little bit of space against the All Blacks. Then they break the line into 22, but offload goes forward. Again, a decent chance. And just that kind of promise from England of what they can do, if they can manufacture the opportunities. New Zealand then with their first entry into the 22, they go wide to Fainga'anuku. He makes good ground. They come back inside, drive up to the line, then go wide again. And Fainga'anuku then goes off the back of that ruck and forces his way over. Converse missed 5 points to 0. And New Zealand just showing that ruthlessness that, they're known for. Then immediately back on attack. Jordan breaking to 22. He gets tackled, gets back up though, drives forward, sets up good platform for his team. All Blacks spread it quickly right to left. Cody Taylor, he's out wide. Mitchell is steaming over to try and cover. He's got 2 players to cover. Taylor just steps him and goes over to score. Not really anything Mitchell could do there. Converted for 12 points to 0. And, this New Zealand team, we're seeing that in patches, they can really hit the heights. They have the ability to do that, but it's about, can they sustain those heights for a full 80 minutes? Because you saw them allow Scotland back into the game last week. We saw that, it was only really the last 20 minutes that they took the game away from Ireland in the opener. And it's, and this England team, I think in terms of form is a step above either of those two. England then, they get caught out in the wide channels, twice there as well. So there's definitely issues for England to address there, which maybe, given the result, might go a little bit under the radar, but there is, space to exploit out there if you have the personnel, and New Zealand certainly have that. Then we have a funny moment from referee Piardi on the comms. England secured a ball in their own half. Piardi, he's obviously looked down and he saw a line, and the England ruck is just on their side of it. And he then declares inside the 50. Then a few minutes later, you hear him on the mic as he realizes it's actually the 10-meter line and not the halfway line, which he thought, and says, "Oh yeah, it was definitely it was definitely inside the 22." Then we have Earls sets England off on a counter-attack. Marcus Smith, he's on for Stewart, who failed in HIA. He does well. Out to Faye Woboso. Sets off, gets to about 5 meters out. Nice, that mix of pace and elusiveness, really, doing well there on the wing. Recycled it on the hill, but then Proctor does really well to turn him over onto his back and hold him up over the line. And we see New Zealand using that as a tactic a lot during this tour. England then, they managed to hit back against New Zealand off a scrum inside the 22. They've got options either way, so it's a nice attacking opportunity for them. They decide to go left. Ford is kind of drifting out and almost like running into Lawrence, and he's attracting his own defender with him as well. But he does give it to Lawrence. Lawrence steps through the gap. Nice fend, and then he gets himself over the score. Converse is missed, 12 points to 5, and England are on the board. New Zealand then exploit England out wide yet again. Fainganuku just smashes Faye Woboso out of the way, close to the line. England don't do well to turn it over 5 metres out through Itoje, because I think if New Zealand had scored again at that stage, we're looking at a very different complexion on the game. England gets themselves into position at the 22, not making ground, so they go back to Ford, who drops a goal for 12 points to 8. Pretty much carbon copy, they're repeated a few minutes later for 12 points to 11, and that's a halftime score. And England in the game, New Zealand had that purple patch early on, but England have worked their way back into it. Into the second half then, and Cody Taylor playing the ball on the ground, gets yellow. I thought, probably should have been just a penalty, but he's in the bin. England go up the line. England then from the line out, they spread it, work it 5 metres out. Mitchell picks, he's scanning, looking for options out wide right. And suddenly, I think New Zealand maybe had overdrifted because it just opens up for him. So he goes for the line, he gets stopped. And it's one of those ones where possibly he may have scored, but play continues anyway. England recycle it, come back inside close to the post, and Underhill gets over. No debate about that one. Converted for 18 points to 12. England now in the lead. England then over again. Roebuck breaks into 22, gives it to Earl. Ball goes to the deck, and then Ford gathers it. The bouncing ball sits up nicely for him, and he goes over. We have a TMO check. And it looks like Barrett's actually stripped the ball rather than Earl knocking it on. The referee judges that he thinks it's actually been knocked on, but it doesn't matter anyway because the TMO has spotted that England were offside from the line at the start of the move. So, it didn't matter whether it was a strip or a knock on anyway. New Zealand then on the edge of the 22. Barrett with a great cross kick, but Quinn Tupaia can't hold it. And again, if you had gone in there, bit of momentum for New Zealand could have changed things. Ford then with a great kick that it was really well weighted because first of all it gives Faye Woboso a good chase down the left wing. The ball beats everyone into touch, but because of where he's kicked it from, it's a 50-22. So it was a nice one between those, basically giving England both of those options, potential, try score or a good position if it doesn't work out. England then move the ball inside from the line out. Lawrence, he draws 2 defenders to him and then he just puts Dingwall through the gap that he's created. Over he goes to score, convert for 25 points to 12. And England's attack just looking so much better than, we saw during the Six Nations and especially last year's November internationals. Then we have Itoje with hands on the ground into 22. New Zealand opt to tap and go. Mackenzie though knocks on and England run it out of their 22 through Pollock and then Roebuck before knocking on. And it was a great defence by Lackey just to trail that and pretty much force that knock on in the end. England then win a penalty at the scrum, and you feel like the momentum was with them. They, a score here, they could really shut New Zealand out. Up to go into the 22, they go off the top, but they spill it. New Zealand then counter, kick it downfield. Smith covering, scoops up the ball, tries to run it out, but gets isolated. Now the All Blacks have a chance, and you're feeling like there could be a momentum shift here in the game. And they kick to the corner. They knock on as they're setting up the maul, but Itoje played the man in the air, so it's another penalty to them. This time back to the corner. They do set up the maul. England in from the side. Earl goes to the bin. Back to the corner again. Feeling like this is potentially a big moment in the game. Taylor goes off the back of the maul, almost gets there. They've sucked in though a lot of the English defenders, spread it infield. Mackenzie then puts Jordan over to score, converted for 25 points to 19. Jordan getting basically his customary try at test level. England then, trying to wrest that momentum back. Pollock gets over the ball and England go up the line to the edge of the 22, but Satiti steals the line out and New Zealand clear. And now it's a little bit on a knife edge between them. England, though, win a penalty, and it's just outside the 22. They call for the tee. Ford slots it for 28 points in 19, and now New Zealand needs 2 scores in 5 minutes. And you feel like, yes, New Zealand definitely have the ability to do that, but breathing room for England, and as long as they don't mess up, it should be a win. All Blacks then looking to run it out of their own half, just not willing to give the ball back to England because they know England could hold on to it for a few minutes and run the clock down. Ball goes loose. Pollock, he gets there, boots it on, then gets there for a second kick. Kind of comes off his shin, but it bounces into the pass of Roebuck, who is able to scoop it up and goes over in the corner. Conversions missed, 33 points to 19, and that's the game, and that's how it finished. There's a minute or so left, but not really anything after that. So full-time score, England 33, New Zealand 19, and New Zealand's chance of a Grand Slam winning tour gone against, for me, the best team that played, on this tour so far. And, well, let's deal with the All Blacks first, and I'll come back to England, actually. So, All Blacks, I've say it so many times, a poor All Blacks team is still better than most teams in the world. And, this team I don't think is poor. I think that they're definitely not up to the standards that, that high bar that New Zealand set themselves, being, up there, number 1 in the world. They're definitely a step below the Springboks at the minute. But you can see that, they're bringing players through, and, it feels like they're on the right track in terms of the development, and they're just beginning to take strides compared to a lot of other teams, the likes of Ireland and France, who we kind of seen going backwards, this window, and pulling away from, they were kind of down in that position where you thought maybe Australia, on their day could beat them. We've seen Argentina beat them on their day as well. And they're trying to get to that point where they can be consistent from game to game and also consistent within games. And I don't think they're quite there, but you do feel like they're moving in that direction at the minute. Certainly not the finished product, but, some brilliant players, in that team, and they're bringing in new ones as well. And, it's really having, I think a decent impact for them in terms of how, they're going to be set up for the next World Cup. I think they're going to have a lot more options available to them in terms of, having just a stronger squad. And you look at, the likes of Parker in the back row has been brilliant. Lakai, I thought, was one of the best players on the field today. Savea is, he's just a phenomenon as a player. And, you're seeing, the likes, like in the backs as well, just the number of options they have there. They had, Caleb Clark on the wing there, during the tour. Now Fainganuku is out there. They brought Proctor into the centres. You got Tupai there, Leonard Brown off the bench. You got Carter, who came through on the wing. And then you add in, the Barretts and Jordan, who've been there all the time. McKenzie coming off the bench. And yeah, there's a really, really good squad there. And it's just now, I think, about getting caps into those players over the next couple of years. And, they're going to be in there among the top teams at the next World Cup again. So on to England then. I thought, England did really well in terms of not panicking. And then that ability that when they got themselves back to 1 point down, kind of a similar position to where Scotland did last week, except England obviously got there earlier because they got there by half time. But then that ability to show that ambition to try and score tries, and only when it was a position where they where they could make it a 2-score game that they actually went for a penalty. So I think they did it in the right way. They went for the drop goals when they were behind, trying to chip away at the lead. And then once they got themselves into the lead, they were then trying to extend it in 5s and 7s. I think that's what top teams do. And England have, really blossomed, I think, this year. We saw them much improved in the Six Nations. They're even a step or two ahead of that, I think, in this window here. And, you look at there's plenty of debate about who's the best 10, etc. But if they keep delivering, those debates I think go away. It's only when they have a poor result that it's England, so there's always going to be that debate. If they have a poor result, suddenly Ford is the worst 10 in the world, and Finn Smith should be in there, or Marcus Smith, or whoever. But right now things are going well. Team is looking good. They have real options and real pace on the wings as well, which is good. Fullback, still, just with injuries and stuff, I think is maybe a little bit of a problem position. Although I thought Marcus Smith did well when he came on today, but I don't know whether he's a long-term thing there. So getting Furbank back will be a big boost to them. And then in the pack, plenty of options there, and guys are starting to deliver as well. They went through a kind of a period, the last, before this year, so the last 2 or 3 years before now, where it felt like they were cycling through players who looked good in the Premiership and then weren't delivering when they got the chance, in the Test arena, or they just weren't getting the balance right, especially in the back row. Now it seems like the players are bringing through really are. The likes of, Pepper, who started, and then Pollock off the bench. He's obviously a player that people love to hate, but you can't deny he's a really good player. And for me, definitely the form team in the Northern Hemisphere. And I would say at this stage, probably, even though the rankings won't show it, I don't think at the moment, but for me, they are the best team in the Northern Hemisphere at this moment. I think if you had the Six Nations in this window, I think England would win it because, as I said, Ireland and France, I think, have gone back a little bit in this window, and England have definitely taken a step forward, and they were pretty close during the Six Nations. So really positive for England. New Zealand, there are good signs there for them as well.